Well, I just want to say that this is really an unusual event for me, and but it seems like a very logical development in my life from the point of view of having music now being written about what I wrote, because music was where I started in a lot of ways, and I had a musical education as a child in a lot of peculiar ways, and I'll tell you that in a few minutes. But basically, the idea is that all of this music that came into me as a child and stayed in my brain has now, found its way into my novels and stories and my journalism, my history, and now along comes Mike and other people, and from my novels they are making new music. There's an opera being made by a composer in Saratoga. There's a concerto and a tone poem written from legs by a composer who lives in Berlin, an American writer, composer. And there's so much, and it's cyclical, and I'm delighted to just recognize it. And I must say that the music that came forth tonight was wonderfully true to my life. I mean, it's music that I've heard. I mean, it's authentic, authentically derived out of the work that I've written, I hope. I mean, I think it's like the music I grew up with in the 30s, and it has echoes of the folk music of the 60s when I started to write novels, and it has, but it's the melodies that I of the Depression era and in the 20s and the 19th century, where I also have lived in my imagination for so long. And there was not I don't think there was a note on the whole evening that did not register in a recognizable and very friendly way. And I loved it. I loved the whole evening. I think you have done wonderful. I'll just lay down my credentials as a non-musician. I started probably around the age of 8 taking banjo lessons, and it took them for about 5 or 6 years, I don't know. I went into latter-day grammar school, 7th and 8th grade, and they suggested, I was part of we had a music teacher, Miss Markham, who came around once a week, and we'd have a singing class, and I was actually a singer. We had some of my best friends were not singers. They called them listeners, and they just sat over in the corner silently. And then we had a band, and I was very much a jazz aficionado, and especially Harry James and Ziggy Elman and the great trumpet players of the age, Vic Spiderbeck and Bunny Berrigan. And I wanted to play trumpet, but they ran out of trumpets. And so the next thing, closest thing to a trumpet was a baritone horn they gave me, and it was about this big. And somehow I did not have the same romantic cachet that the trumpet had. And so I said, no, I'll go for the drums, and I became a drummer. So I went and bought a drum, and I played the school drum for a while. And in high school, I was a marching band drummer in Christian Brothers Academy for for 3 years. And I played in the jazz band badly, but I played. And then I began singing. I got into a choral group in high school. I had always sung throughout my life. My family always sang. And we sang in the car and we sang at parties, and my mother knew all the songs, and she had a stack of records like that, and I still have them from 1914, 1915, when she started collecting records. I got into choral groups in high school and college, and then I got into barbershop quartets. And I have a lousy voice, but I can carry a tune. And as I once said, I can't sing, but I will. And I do on occasions, not tonight. But I felt that, music was so important to me that I just, the last novel I wrote, it's called Shango's Beads and Two-Tone Shoes. I wanted to put two things into it. One was the piano music of my great buddy Jody Bolden, a black guy who played the best stride piano we ever had in this town. And he was here probably from the mid to late 40s, right after the war. And then he stayed until he died in the 60s, late 60s. And he was terrific. He was a protege of Fats Waller, who you evoked tonight with Ain't Misbehavin'. He was Billie Holiday's first accompanist, and when he was a kid pianist in New York. And he almost married Billie. And they had their announcement in the Bronx newspaper. But it didn't happen.
He pops up as a character.
Yeah, he's in the novel. Yeah, he owns the Havana Club, and he was a terrific influence on me in my life. And he ran a saloon called the Cary Blue, which I hung out in. It was a great jazz place, and it was also a great interracial place. I mean, it was the first place that I knew of. I mean, there were plenty before my time, but nothing like that in my time, where the races mixed very easily, and it was never a question of any segregation, and as there was in many other salons. But the other thing was Bing Crosby and a song that he recorded with the Mills Brothers called Shine. Bing was a great hero of mine when I was a kid, and the Mills Brothers likewise. And they made a bunch of songs together in the 30s, and Shine was one of them. And I've been listening to that since like 1942, when I bought my first Crosby collection, when I had a phonograph at long last. And I couldn't figure out how I was going to use the song, but I had to use the song. And finally, I put Bing and the Mills Brothers into the book, in the opening chapter. The Mills Brothers are only there indirectly, but Bing is there, and he sings Shine. And Jody plays piano for him on that date. So the music that drove me into it was just incredible, and I couldn't figure out for years how to use that music, but I knew I had to use it, and I did finally. So let me stop there because I'll just ramble forever.
All right with that. It's an enjoyable time. Are there any questions that about either the songwriting process, the songs, or any of the novels? Is everyone just as much in awe as I am?
somebody there has a question.
How long did it take to write this song?
The last one, Francis, took me quite a while, and it came down to like 2 hours that I had to make it happen. And I'd say I wrote the song in those 2 hours, but I had been playing around with it for weeks. The others, they came somewhat easier. I had the music all figured out, and I had a melody, and I just kind of needed to find the lyrics that I wanted to place within the melody. So those came easier, but the Francis tune was a difficult one.
In writing the novel, did you just have the music in your head when you'd be writing, or would you actually play music when you would write something?
For years, I couldn't play music. Sometimes now I play music. I have, on my computer, I have a lot of songs that I stole from someplace. My son can tell me where I stole them from. 10 years ago, when it was de rigueur to steal music. And we can't do that anymore. And I download things from YouTube that I love, and they disappear. I can't save them. But I have a lot of, I have thousands of records, and the music has always been in my life, and now, oddly, it's in my head. It's been there, I would say, 9 years, 10 years. I don't know how long. I wake up every day with a song going through my brain. And it could be Carry Me Back to Old Virginia, or Come Josephine in My Flying Machine, or it could be Cole Porter, Let's Do It, or who knows, it could be anything. It's never classical music. It's I might get a classical melody, which I can never identify in my brain. But this is like Chinese water torture, and it won't go away, and it keeps replaying. And what it starts out to be, if it wakes me up sometimes, or I wake up and it's there. And I presume it's there even when I'm asleep. And it sounds like, do you remember Mitch Miller? Mitch Miller on television? And I loved Mitch Miller. I have about 20 of his records, I think. I used to love that because it echoed all of the songs of the Tin Pan Alley that I learned when I was growing up, and he was singing them with this choral group that he got together. I thought they were great. Most people hated him. He was a very reviled figure in my set, anyway. But I loved him, and I thought he was a sensational character, and that was one of the great cultural contributions. I have a hard time when I try to defend Tin Pan Alley as a cultural treasure, but I think it is.